Was Lionel Messi robbed of the 2026 World Cup Golden Ball by Rodri? At least that's the debate now exploding across the football world. When FIFA crowned Rodri as the tournament's best player, voices defending Messi were almost immediate. Even a Premier League post celebrating Rodri quickly turned into something resembling a giant public ballad, with hundreds of thousands of fans flooding the comments with one name, Lionel Messi. So if you had the vote, Rodri or Messi? The 2026 World Cup had finally come to an end. But when the final whistle echoed around a stadium packed with tens of thousands of supporters, what remained in the minds of football fans was not simply the goals, the unprecedented records, or the arrival of a new world champion. What remained were the debates that refused to die. This was the biggest World Cup in history, 48 nations, 104 fiercely contested matches, 39 days of football spread across 3 countries in North America. A tournament so enormous that football became more than a sport, colliding with commercialization, politics, and even the conspiracy theories that seemed to follow FIFA wherever it went. But amid all the noise, all the chaos, and all the controversy, there was one story powerful enough to eclipse them all. The story of Lionel Messi at 39 years old, an age when most football legends have already traded the pitch for the dugout or simply stepped away to enjoy a quieter life. Messi walked onto the biggest stage on earth, one final time. This was his last dance, and this time the question was no longer whether he could win the World Cup. He had already conquered the summit in 2022. There was only one question left for the football world to answer. As his career entered its twilight, what kind of legacy would Lionel Messi leave behind? The answer arrived with force, and it arrived almost immediately. 8 goals, 4 assists, throughout the tournament. Whenever Argentina found themselves standing on the edge of elimination, their number 10 was there, like a savior summoned at the exact moment he was needed. From a treacherous group stage to the unforgiving battles of the knockout rounds, Messi remained at the center of everything. Every attacking move, every decisive touch, every moment that could change the fate of a match. He was the reason millions of Argentines continued to believe that the fire of La Albiceleste could never truly be extinguished. Of course, he was no longer the El Pulga of his mid-20s. The explosive 50-meter sprints were gone. So were the days when he could glide past 4 or 5 defenders as if they simply weren't there. But at 39, Messi had evolved into something else entirely. A grandmaster of football, with nothing more than a glance, a subtle movement, or the slightest adjustment of his body, he could still manipulate an entire defensive structure. He didn't need to run through the opposition anymore. His presence alone could make them move. And then, Argentina reached the World Cup final. It was a script almost too perfect for football. On one side stood Lionel Messi, the greatest symbol of the past. On the other stood Lamine Yamal, the brightest star of the future. 2 generations, 2 eras, 2 players shaped by the same sacred footballing ground, La Masia. But football does not always follow the script of a fairy tale. The final became a brutal examination of physical endurance and tactical discipline. Spain, operating with a level of possession and control bordering on perfection, suffocated every available space. Argentina fought. They resisted, they searched, but the gaps simply weren't there. After 120 exhausting minutes, Spain finally broke through 1-0. The new champions had been crowned. Messi quietly collected his silver medal. But that bitter defeat could not erase the truth. Lionel Messi had just produced a phenomenal individual World Cup. And as the football world looked back at the journey, at the 39-year-old who's had once again carried an entire nation on his shoulders, one question began spreading across the football world. If the Golden Ball doesn't belong to Lionel Messi, then who could possibly deserve it? And then came the moment FIFA announced the winner of the World Cup Golden Ball. The name that was called out shattered almost every expectation. It wasn't Lionel Messi. It was Rodri, a defensive midfielder. No goals, no assists, no spectacular moment powerful enough to set social media on fire in the way Messi had done throughout the tournament. And yet, Rodri was the heartbeat, the lungs, the central nervous system of a ruthless Spanish side that simply refused to be beaten. To understand just how controversial that decision was, we have to look back through World Cup history. For much of the tournament's existence, the Golden Ball has traditionally belonged to the artists. Players capable of turning football into their own personal stage. Diego Maradona in 1986, Zinedine Zidane in 2006, Luka Modric in 2018, and Lionel Messi himself in 2014 and 2022. What did they all have in common? They made people remember them, a legendary solo run, a magical pass that changed the fate of a match, a moment that needed barely 5 seconds of footage before the audience instinctively nodded and said, "Yes, that's greatness." But the 2026 World Cup challenged that assumption completely. For perhaps the first time, the tournament's highest individual honor did not celebrate the man who finished the move. It celebrated the man who controlled the conditions that allowed the move to exist. And what made the decision such a flashpoint for controversy was the most brutally simple language in football. Statistics. Rodri, 0 goals, 0 assists. Lionel Messi, 8 goals to 4 assists, 24 big chances created. If the Golden Ball were simply an exercise in adding up attacking numbers, the debate would have been over before the final even began. But FIFA wasn't looking for the tournament's most prolific attacker. They were recognizing the player who, in their eyes, had been the greatest footballing brain of the tournament. And that is where we have to look at Rodri through a completely different lens. Because there is a world of difference between creating a moment and controlling the variables that make that moment possible. Messi can create a goal from absolutely nothing. Rodri controls whether the opposition is even allowed to build the attack in the first place. Messi can tear a defense apart with one perfectly weighted through ball. Rodri can suffocate an opponent's entire attacking idea simply by occupying the right space and closing the right passing lane. Messi makes the world gasp at what has happened. But Rodri makes opponents despair because they cannot make anything happen at all. And the World Cup final in North America became the clearest possible illustration of that difference. Argentina entered the final with Messi at the peak of his powers. But waiting for him was not simply a collection of powerful centre-backs ready to throw themselves into challenges. It was something far more sophisticated, a pressing network orchestrated by Rodri. Spain's number 16 didn't charge blindly into tackles. He read space like a supercomputer. When Spain came under pressure, Rodri became the perfect escape route. When Spain lost possession, one step backwards from Rodri could shut down 2 potential counter-attacking lanes. When Messi dropped deep to receive the ball, there was almost always a red shirt appearing in the shadows, disrupting the number 10's vision and limiting his options. And sometimes, a perfectly timed tactical foul in the middle of the pitch was enough for Rodri to kill a dangerous Argentine counterattack before the cameras had even found the moment. That is why Rodri's contribution will never dominate TikTok compilations or YouTube shorts. When his teammates have the ball, he becomes the circulation hub. When space opens up, he accelerates the attack with a line-breaking pass that cuts straight through the opposition's midfield. It is a form of invisible power. When a striker smashes the ball into the net, 80,000 people rise to their feet. But when a defensive midfielder reads a dangerous situation 3 seconds before anyone else and quietly eliminates it, the crowd may never even realize their team has just escaped a goal. That is the paradox of Rodri. He can be the most important player on the pitch, while simultaneously being the least noticeable player on the television screen. FIFA's decision at the 2026 World Cup was not simply about awarding an individual prize. It was a statement, a declaration that modern football is changing. In an era where the game is increasingly dominated by goal-scoring statistics, 15-second highlight clips, and players followed by hundreds of millions of people on Instagram, Rodri represents an entirely different footballing philosophy. No noise, no glamour, no need for the spotlight, no outrageous statements, and, above all, no obsession with making himself the center of the universe. Rodri lets the football and the system around him do the talking, but one uncomfortable question remains. Was that quiet sacrifice and masterful tactical intelligence really enough to overshadow the pure magic of Lionel Messi? Because if Rodri is the perfect brain that allows Spain's system to operate like a flawless machine, then Messi is the glitch in the matrix. The one extraordinary individual capable of tearing apart even the most sophisticated defensive structure ever designed. One represents absolute control. The other embodies the decisive moment. One ensures that the system never collapses. The other was born to destroy the system with nothing more than a drop of the shoulder and a twist of the hips. And that is why choosing between Messi and Rodri is no longer simply a question of who is the better footballer. It has become a civil war between two completely different footballing ideologies. Do you worship the romance of individual genius? Or do you bow before the perfection of collective football? Precise, calculated, and almost scientific. That fundamental clash between two definitions of greatness is precisely what transformed the 2026 World Cup Golden Ball into one of the most controversial but also one of the most fascinating individual awards in World Cup history. As the curtain falls on the 2026 World Cup, perhaps Rodri owes no one an explanation, and certainly no apology, for being named the tournament's Golden Ball winner. And Lionel Messi, at 39 years old, with 8 goals and 4 assists, needs no more trophies to prove a greatness that has already reached the realm of immortality, because this tournament gave us something truly extraordinary. We witnessed a central midfielder control the rhythm and destiny of the greatest tournament on earth without needing to score a single goal. And at the same time, we witnessed the final strokes of genius from a footballing artist who could still make the entire world hold its breath every time the ball came to his feet. Rodri elevated an entire team. Messi created magic out of nothing. So, was FIFA right to honor the beating heart of the world champions? Or were millions of fans right to call for the player who created more unforgettable moments than anyone else? Perhaps the answer cannot be found in statistics alone. Perhaps it depends on the lens through which you view greatness and what the word truly means to you. So, if the deciding FIFA ballot were in your hands, would you choose Rodri's perfect control or Lionel Messi's final masterpiece? Leave your verdict in the comments below. And more importantly, tell us why. Was it Rodri's tactical brilliance that convinced you? Or was it the emotion, the magic, and the unforgettable moments created by Lionel Messi? One golden ball, two footballing philosophies, two completely different definitions of greatness. Now, it's your turn to decide.